Why is it before the start of these I get a coughing fit? So, apologise, croaky voice, and welcome to another live stream. We're going to be talking Subaru Tuning. We're going to be, hopefully, I'll be answering your questions, your burning issues, talking about Subarus. So, let's crack on. If you've not seen one of these before, this is number 52, so I've done a few of them, and they're normally pretty hectic. If you've got a question, put it in the live stream chat box, whether it's on your phone or on a computer. I'm not sure how you do it on a TV, but you'll probably figure it out. If you've got a question, put a Q at the beginning of it, and I will be able to spot that it's a question, rather than just a random comment or a chatting amongst yourselves kind of thing. So yeah, questions about Subaru Tuning. So far away. I can see we've got a few people in there already, which is good. I get a lot of feedback on the live streams, from customers that come in for mapping. If you don't know me, I'm Duncan. I operate in the UK tuning Subarus. It's what I do for a living. Been doing it for nearly 20 years now, and I've probably tuned thousands of Subarus. I haven't kept a numerical count of them, but it is well into the thousands, many thousands. So, right, we have a couple of questions already. Right, a controversial one to start with from Chris. As I've been to many Subaru tuners over the years, thought it'd be an interesting topic to hear tuners' excuses for engine failures they've built without naming them. Yeah, generally the mapper gets blamed, or the customer. Failing that, it's the oil pump that let go for some reason. Part failure is often a good excuse, but yeah, generally it is the mapper, because it's the last person that is touching the car generally. But yeah, it could be a very big topic if we went into that in a lot of detail. Maybe I'll do that in a video at some point. Right, a question from Carl. Hi Carl. Completely untouched 2005 STI. Previous owner had it 17 years and got all that it needed. If I put on a K&N air filter, will the extra air make it run lean? If you're talking about an induction kit, any change from the standard airbox to an induction kit is going to change the fueling. A lot of the gains that they suggest for, like, I'll put on this K&N 57i induction kit and you'll gain 10 horsepower, it's because it's leaning it out. That's where the extra power comes from. They're assuming that the car's running safely, which it probably is if it's been running for 17 years, and by putting on this induction kit, it's going to slightly lean it out a little bit. That's really bad English. It's going to lean it out a little bit, so that extra leaning it out from a standard pretty rich map from the factory will create extra power. Whether it's safe or not is another matter. It can lean it out quite a lot. It can make it dangerously unsafe, and my advice would be it needs at least checking. Anything, in my opinion, anything that you're doing to improve the performance of the Subaru, of your Subaru, should at least be checked by someone that knows what they're doing, checking the air-fuel ratio, making sure it's not detting. Like using deck cans rather than just looking at what the computer is saying. Anything that you think is going to improve the performance, improve the power, needs checking, because why wouldn't you? be a real shame to blow up an engine that's been in there 17 years, been working really nicely, I presume, for 17 years, just for the sake of, getting it on the dyno, checking the air-fuel ratio, or getting someone on the road to check the air-fuel ratio, making sure it's not detting. I offer that as a service for people in the UK. If they just want to bring it up to the dyno, give it a run on the dyno, check that it's happy, it's safe. If it is, great. If it isn't, then I'll advise customers accordingly. And if they want to get it mapped or change something else, then they do it at that point. Right, another question. Hi, Cameron. Can a 2004 Subaru Forester XT USDM be tuned? Yes, absolutely. It's probably drive-by-wire on that, I would imagine, but either way, it can be tuned using open source software. It's probably the easiest way, particularly with the Green Speed Initiative in the US. Open source allows you to switch off things that the likes of Carb or Architect aren't allowed to do. So yeah, it can be tuned quite easily, and quite a good improvement on that, even on a standard car, to be honest. Ooh, big question. Right, okay. I'll be brutally honest on this. Right, Link ECU does a fantastic job. Does a really fantastic job. It's nice. It's modular. For someone fitting it themselves and adding extra sensors, adding the wideband, those sort of things, it is possible for people to do that themselves, and a lot of enthusiasts and sort of garages around the world do that. Link sell the CAN Lambda setup as a brilliant solution. It is a brilliant solution, and it's pretty much plug and play. But using it to monitor and check the fueling on boost, to give an example, it is polling the air-fuel ratio 10 times a second. And you think that's fabulous. But when the engine's doing 6,000 RPM and running lean, by the time the CAN Lambda has actually measured the leanness and added a little bit of fuel, and then the next cycle it adds a little bit more fuel, you're 100 revolutions of an engine further on, and a lot can happen in 100 revolutions of an engine. By comparison, a Civex, you could run it at 2,000 times a second from the wideband side of things, so it's actually measuring every single cylinder and making adjustments just based on that single cylinder alone. So that one element, like the lambda control on Civex versus Link, miles better. I could go into lots of other issues, or lots of other things that's much better. The boost control on Civex is way better than Link. The data logging resolution is way better on Civex than it is on Link. Link, if you're data logging too many things and using lots of different sensors, it can clog up the processor on the ECU, and it switches off certain things. Can be a bit unpredictable if you've got a really heavily loaded ECU. But yeah, I think the Civex is worth the extra money. It's not the easiest thing in the world to set up, but I think it's worth it. So that's stopped the conversation dead from everyone. Having said that, I'm a Link dealer, and there are cases where a Link is the better option. The drive-by-wire cars, and particularly at the moment with a Link, it's really easy to put a Link ECU in a drive-by-wire and have it running within an hour or so, and doing all the bits that the normal standard factory car does, particularly on the CAN bus cars. But it's just not quite as advanced as maybe it could be. I am doing a video for the Academy members next week about the extra custom map side of things that Cyvex can do. I won't go into that now, but it is mind-blowing as to the capabilities that it can do. Right, how are we doing, guys? Just say a quick hello to a few guys. Chris, Patrick, Zed, Kev, Mel, hi mate, Fez. ECU choice, you basically go with what your mapper's most comfortable with, because I would suggest choose your mapper first. So if it was me and you were asking me and it was a straight choice between the two money wise, I would say Cyvex. Other mappers in different parts of the world may say different things. Yeah, you won't see many second-hand Cyvex up for sale for a reason, because once you've invested in that, you can, if it's a plug and play for a 2005 STI, you could make it into a plug and play for a 99 to 2000 or a 92 to 96, just by sending it back and having the board amended, or changed into a general purpose board, in which case a wiring loom, wire that in and it'll run anything, be that Subaru or Supra or a Skyline or whatever. Right, okay, any more questions coming at the moment? Everyone's quiet. Is the day change throwing you off? Hi Patrick, hi Dean. Right. What's always interesting with these is for people to say where they're from, what they're driving. So if you haven't got a question, just say hi from, I don't know, Canada, Botswana, Israel, New Zealand, wherever, Japan. I don't think we've had someone say hi from Japan yet, but it's weird from my point of view, the places in the world that people are watching these from. It's very humbling in many ways. Hi Fred, how you doing? Honda VTEC group. No, I haven't got my backwards cap on, so no, it's not the Honda group. Right, Wolfie 1091. Right, it's a cold air intake worth getting if you're under 400 wheel horsepower. Yes, I did a test on a car probably about a year ago. It was running 360 horsepower, couldn't get any more. Changed the standard airbox, no other changes to the car. Changed the standard airbox to an induction kit. It was a good quality. It was a K&N type of one. Obviously, disregard the previous comment about the 57i induction kit. It is a good induction kit. K&N have been making filters for years, and they do it right. Put this induction kit on, and we gained another 20 horsepower straight off. So, well worth it. And that was with closed loop fuel control. So it was same boost, same fueling, same ignition even, and it just created extra power just because of the airflow through. So yes, it is worth it. Standard airbox you can get to 400 horsepower, but an induction kit would probably make 420. Wayne 1962. Any ideas of how to lower box for MOT? I'm presuming you're meaning NOx, right? MOT. For that, you basically need to get the cat or the sports cat absolutely glowing hot. What I do personally when I'm trying to get cars through MOTs is get them to do the MOT test, check everything out, normally fail on emissions, and then I say, okay, can I bring the car back for you to do an emissions check in about half an hour, and give it death basically for half an hour, bring it back, it's tinking away, and then the NOx readings go down to zero, or pretty much zero. That's great to hear, Patrick. There's lots more that I've got planned. I put a whole ream of live streams on there yesterday that I'm going to be doing over the forthcoming weeks. For those of you who don't know, I run an academy on here that teaches people how to map their own cars, or guides them on how to map their own cars using real world tuning rather than classroom stuff. I'm not into theories and stuff like that, just sharing my experience of mapping cars over the last 20 years, and say, okay, maybe you'd be better off if you went this route rather than that route, but try and explain how I've come to that conclusion, because experience is really hard to share. It's difficult to share because I can't remember the process, how I learnt things. So I do a live stream each week, or planning to do a live stream each week for the academy side of things. Plus there's a Discord group as well, and sort of log reviews, that kind of thing. So I'm glad you're finding them useful. There are lots more coming. As you would have seen with the live streams I got planned, Cyvex videos, link videos, and standard ECU videos. So they're all coming. Fairs, hi mate. Have you had much experience with the Tim Cox turbos? No, I haven't. I'm sure they're very good, but I'm really happy with the relationship that I got with Fastline turbos, and I've never been let down by one of those, so that would always be the one that I would recommend. I don't know whether you saw the picture that I posted on the YouTube page with the 4 videos lined up. That is a video coming very soon, and Fastline lent me those turbos so that I could do the video. So I haven't got an experience with Tim's turbos, but I've seen other people that have, so I've just got no inclination to change. Right, hi Neil. Have you ever done tests on Mamba turbos or any other Wu-Tang specials? Are they all terrible? What's your experience? Are they all terrible? I don't think they're all terrible, but they're all mildly disappointing. Is probably the best way that I could put it. Always a little bit laggier than they ought to be. Always a little bit less power than they're suggested that they ought to be. In fact, probably quite a lot less power than they're suggested that they ought to be. Always a bit more of an issue with boost creep or with wastegate control because of the cheaper quality components. Personally, I would say if you're going to put a turbo on, save for the right one rather than putting on the wrong one. Mamba have been around for a while, but I've always been mildly disappointed at the very least. Could using launch control make it hot enough? Yeah, it could, but that's a lot more destructive than giving it a good old blast. It doesn't have to be like full on high speed, smashing all the speed limits, but just certainly giving it some boost so that the hot air is going through the turbos, going through into the cat. That's generally enough. For me, it's about 10-minute drive to get them hot enough to get the NO2 emissions down to 0. Hi Steve. Duncan, can you run methanol on a standard ECU on a 2005 Blob WRX? What would happen if you ran out of meth? Obviously try not to. Right. By methanol, are you meaning in the tank and as an octane booster for the fuel? Yes, you can. You can tune for that, or you could, with the likes of Carberry, run like twin maps, like a V-Power map and a methanol map. No problem with doing that. If you run out of methanol and you're having to fill out with normal fuel, you just flick it to the other map. On some of the options on some of the ROMs, you can do like a flex fuel setup, whereby you fit in a flex fuel sensor, which is then measuring how much alcohol is in the actual tank or through the fuel. And it will adjust the map accordingly. You can do it. It is worth it. There are good gains from methanol because of the higher octane, because of the oxygen content, and because of the piston cooling. It depends what you're trying to get to, really. If you were just wanting to use it as a bit of extra protection on a track day, for example, then popping a litre or two of methanol in the tank unmapped should not be an issue whatsoever. It will just give it, it's like the equivalent of putting a bottle of octane booster in there. Right, good question. Scooby STI, Deutschwerk injectors or ID 1050s? ID 1050s are much nicer, in my opinion. And I'll wait for someone from Deutschwerk to tell me otherwise, or someone that sells Deutschwerk to tell me otherwise. But the ID 1050s are reliable. They're reasonably cheap. The connectors are nice, easy to pin up, easy to put in. Yeah, and they work. Yeah, Zed's car, you'd have seen Zed's car in one of the videos. Zed's in the academy, and he tuned his car with me sitting beside him, pressurising him and filming him and all the rest of it. But that's a Fastline hybrid TD04, 350 horsepower. Really nice turbo. Donar NL. What brake pads do you recommend for an Impreza STI? Mostly street, but sees an occasional track day. If you're on the Brembos, I'm running the DBA Extreme, the orange pads in the Forester STI at the moment. I've been very happy with those. Really good value. Grip's good from cold, don't squeal, would cope with the track day quite easily. I was always a fan of the Performance Friction Z rated pads, and they were my go-to pad for many years. Did many track days, many road miles, and they were perfect all the time. It's only when you start really getting extreme and quick on track that they start to fade. It's very nice of you to say, Patrick. I'll pay you later. Yeah, Discord is not perfect software, but it's a really good sort of way for everyone to chat and discuss, and you can upload pictures and ROMs and all the rest of it. But it's available to Academy members only, I'm afraid. Right, a question here. Guillermo. How important is it to upgrade the hood scoop from a standard to an STI or a larger one in a top mount intercooler? More size means more airflow, but does it make a noticeable difference? Yeah, if you've got a WRX under hood scoop collector thingy that goes onto the top of the intercooler, I'll never know the exact name for that piece of metal, but if you got the WRX one, which is directing it onto the WRX size intercooler and you've got an SDI top mount there, then obviously it's not directing air onto all of the intercooler surface, so you're not getting quite the cooling. Noticeable difference. It probably, I've not done a back-to-back test on that. Maybe that's a good one to do for the future, but it would be worth doing, in my opinion, particularly if you're pushing the power sort of mid 300s. Below that, it's probably not going to make much of a difference. Hi Zed, have you done meth map on Carberry? Could we try it on yours? Yes, I have done many meth maps on Carberry. The only thing to say with that is you kind of need to be careful about where you're fitting the switch for the methanol, and you need to label it up very carefully as to which one's meth and which one's not meth, because running on the meth map when you've not got meth in the tank will be catastrophic. So I would always caution about having those near passengers that go, oh, what's this? And yeah, it's not going to end very well. So driver's side, yeah, meth, V-power, whatever it is in your part of the world, it's a good thing. On your setup, you're probably going to see another 30, maybe 40 horsepower on yours. So yeah, it's quite a nice kit. Right, at what point would I need a fuel pressure regulator? You mean an aftermarket one? You've got one as standard, but the standard new age fuel pressure regulator copes with 450 horsepower. Beyond that, you probably want to be changing rails and those kind of things, and fit an aftermarket fuel pressure regulator. But that is an expensive job to do safely. You know, you've got to be talking proper AN fittings rather than rubber lines with Jubilee clips around, because if you're going to do it, you've got to do it properly and safely. Jubilee clips, or worse still, Jubilee clips over the top of braided lines, is just a recipe for a car catching fire. So it's not a quick, or it's not a cheap setup to go to aftermarket fuel rails and aftermarket fuel pressure regulator, but certainly 450 I would be starting to consider it. Right, Cameron, hi Cameron again. Could I tune a 2002 Forester S USDM? Mine seems to feel a bit sluggish. The Forester around that time is kind of like a changeover. There was a period like the earlier SF Forester S Turbo. Some of those had the JECS ECU in, which you can only really map using Ecutech software. So you wouldn't be able to open source tune those. If yours was one of the ones that is slightly later in the production line, and was on a different production line, and they had these bits on the shelf rather than those bits, because Foresters are parts bin cars. You know, I love them to pieces, but you know, every single one is different. It's just what they had on the shelf. If it's got the later ECU, then you should be able to get into that using ROM Radar or ECU Flash or ECU Edit and tune it. Probably the easiest way to tell which one you've got is if you look under the dashboard and you've got your green test mode connectors. If those test mode connectors have got two wires going to them, so the male and the female connectors, if we're allowed to use those terms anymore, but but those connectors, if they've got 2 wires to each side of those, then it'll be on the older ECU that you can't open source tune. If it's got 1 wire and the square, well, it'll be a sort of triangular white plug, then that'll probably be on the newer ECU, which you can open source tune. Right, is the NVIDIA Q300 exhaust with cat downpipe a good exhaust for a Hawkeye, or will it be bloody loud? Which exhaust will be more quiet? I'm not familiar with that particular model. I've tuned lots of NVIDIA exhausts, probably more so on the like the later cars, the GRs and the GVs. They weren't quiet, so I would imagine on a Hawkeye it's gonna be quite loud, but everyone's definition of loud is different. I had 2 cars in the dyno today. Neither of them had silencers at all anywhere in the exhaust, so my ears are ringing from both of those. They were bloody loud, really loud, really loud. Right, I mapped your blob to just under 294. That was good. If you added meth direct in the tank, what could you see BHP wise? If I mapped for it, let's say you run 20% of the fuel that's in the tank as methanol. So if you were putting 50 litres of fuel, 50 litres of fuel in total, 10 of those litres were methanol. If I map to that, you'd probably see 320 out of that. So quite a sizable gain, but if I'm mapping to that, you kind of always got to be running that, or we switch it over to a Carberry setup where you could have switchable maps. There are pros and cons, I won't go into them, but if we went to that, so you could run one methanol map or another as the V-Power map, then that's doable. But yeah, message me, Steve, and we can chat about it. But you'd certainly be over the 300. Okay, will 450 horsepower on a twin scroll setup feel much less laggy than a single scroll setup? There are very few standard position turbos that are twin scroll that will make that power. Very, very few. Most of the ones that you'll be seeing from various companies, I won't name names, but they are effectively a twin entry turbo, so it's not a twin scroll, it's just a single scroll turbo with the entrance to it split into 2. I don't think that you would notice a difference in the way it would spool up. It's not worth the extra expense of changing all the pipework. Personally, I wouldn't do it. As far as the twin scroll setup on the standard Subaru headers and a proper Subaru VF 37, for example, it's much more responsive than a 35 or a 43 equivalent. Alright, how do I find the DBA pads for road use? I think they're brilliant for road use. Perfect pads, not too dusty. They've been in there maybe a year and a half now. No excessive wear on the discs. I've got standard pads at the rear, so maybe that's helping, or maybe it isn't. I don't know. DBA discs have always been good. I've used those in the past. Hawk performance pads I've not used, but I would have thought that would be a good combination. Right, where are we on this? Okay, said right. You already have map switching on the drivers. I know you do. I was just explaining it for other people, because having them in the center console is all very well until you get a passenger that thinks it'd be funny to switch maps for you. And it really isn't funny, because the difference between a methanol map and a V-power map, you may even be sort of six degrees of ignition timing, and plus it'd be a little bit leaner on the methanol map than it is on the petrol map. So you find that it's not going to end well. Right. Right, hey Duncan, have you ever come across rebuilt 5-speed centre diffs with a higher CST fluid? I'm not understanding what you mean by that, higher CST fluid. I don't really get many people with rebuilt 5-speed diffs or like PPG 5-speed gearboxes, because they still break, and if you want a gearbox that doesn't break, or doesn't break quite so easily, unless you're being an absolute hooligan with it, then most people go 6-speed. Right, 10.9 to 11.1 AFR and wide open throttle to start ignition tuning. Downsides of doing it slightly richer are you're just going to be giving away a little bit of power. It's not going to be a lot, but for where you are with the temperature differences, for there, I would say you're in the right sort of ballpark for your car. So yeah, just start nudging the ignition timing up, and you'll get good rewards from that. Certainly more reward from getting the ignition timing right and building yourself a bit of a safety margin on the air fuel ratio than you would if you were, let's say, running at 11.5 AFR. Any info on Jap speed stuff, exhaust, front mount, etc. I wouldn't want to slag Jap speed off, because they're providing a product for a price. It's not a high price, so it's not a high quality product, but they're okay. They're really okay. Like the front mount intercooler, the core is actually good-ish to a certain power level. You kind of outgrow that sort of 500 horsepower onwards, but certainly up to that sort of level, the core of it will do a decent enough job. The pipe work is skinny metal, the connectors are not long enough, and the silicon joiners are too skinny, the clamps are cheap, Michelor clamps. It's okay, certainly better than Toyo Sports, but not up there with the IAG, Perrin, that kind of thing, Mishimoto front mount. The exhausts are okay, bit loud. Sports cats don't last particularly long, they're quite low quality, but you get what you pay for with some of these things, and it is, in some cases, like with the front mount, it is worth paying a little bit extra. I think they fit nicer. The more money, they kind of fit nicer, and the pipes are easier to fit, and you don't have to cut quite so much off the bumpers or the car, or they're just easier to fit a better quality kit. I ought to put my glasses on if I could find them, but right. How much above ambient temp is too much? When should you move from a top mount to a front mount? Yeah, how much is too much? The first thing you would want to kind of do with that is measure what the temperature is going into the throttle, rather than the temperature at the MAF sensor. So information will tell you at that point. So you could just, as I did in the early days, just get a like an EGT probe, but just a plain wire, and tuck that inside a silicon pipe so that it's not touching any metal, just to get a feel for what the temperatures are going into the turbo. Generally, you don't want to be seeing more than 10 degrees above ambient, but it's difficult to get an exact figure. So you will gain power going to a front mount regardless, because it is in the right place. The faster you go with a front mount, the better it works. The faster you go with a top mount, the worse it works. So it depends how fast you're going to go. Jet speed, gravity, front mount. Yeah, like I said, Ben's car, we did the top mount versus front mount test on that. His car had, I'm pretty sure that was a gravity front mount on that, and that worked absolutely perfect. Compared to a top mount, compared to the standard top mount, absolutely brilliant. Good power gains from that. It's just the pipework runs and the silicon connectors. The connectors are too short. They could do with being maybe 10mm longer on each end, and a bit thicker, a bit more substantial, and there would be a better kit. Oh, if I had to choose one Subaru to own and drive for the rest of my life, which one and why? I don't think I could. I really don't think I could. No, I love my Forester. I love the SH. I love the SG9. I love the Legacy. Once I've eventually got that back together, I'll love the next Subaru that I buy and the one after that. But I couldn't just choose one forever, because there's always a nicer one. Did like an RAR though, but you know. Right, 102 octane plus 20% meth added will be interesting. Yes, it would. You will probably very easily get to the point where it just will not det with that particular setup. So you can add ignition time and ignition time and ignition time. It will not date at all. But you'll find that you're actually adding ignition time, and it actually reduces the power after a while. So if you're doing that kind of a fuel mix, it probably needs to be done on the dyno, just so you can spot the point where power isn't going up, so there's no point adding extra. Right. Have I ever had a GC8? No, I have not. I have driven many GC8s, including test driving them, sort of blagging test drives in the early 90s at a local Subaru dealer. Would I recommend 5x100, 5x114? The 6-speed is brilliant. It's a really good gearbox, and wheel bearing strength, particularly if you're using it on track, is superb. The 5x100 wheel bearings are pretty much made of cheese, particularly if you're doing a lot of track work. So the 114 setup is much better. Subaru went to that setup because it was stronger. They were having issues with that. The issues were solved with the bigger wheel bearing, and the 114 wheel bearings are nice because the cartridge ones, so you just got 4 bolts to undo and the bearing's done, rather than pressing in or pressing out, pressing in a new bearing. It's a lot easier. Intact meth versus decat exhaust. Is there a typical gain, and do both allow more ignition timing? Yeah, would you recommend one over the other or both best gains? Both best gains. Meth is great, but it's really, really nasty stuff. Like, do not store it anywhere near where children are going to be. Do not store it anywhere near where it could spill. If it catches fire, you cannot see the flames. I think it's 15 mil will kill you. 5 mil will make you go blind. It dries your skin out. Don't ever pour it without gloves. It hurts my chest when I'm mapping a car with methanol on the dyno. It is really not good stuff, but it makes good power. And, you know, if we care about power, then that's great. It does, weirdly, is slightly more reliable with methanol, but the quality of the methanol's got to be good. Because if it's opened and you leave it opened, it just attracts water, and the magic juice goes. And it's incredibly corrosive to leave within fuel lines or in any part of the engine. So if you're setting the car up for a while, then don't leave methanol in there. Ooh, right. Maximilian, how much heavier is 6-speed swap over a 5-speed? I think it's 30 kilos. It's really heavy. The 6-speed, you wouldn't want to be lifting one of those in on your own, or you wouldn't want to be under a car dropping it down onto you. It is quite heavy. Whereas the 5-speed is a lot more manageable to move around. Yeah, it's worth it though. The extra gearing does make it worthwhile, and the strength. How are we doing time wise? 10 minutes or so left. Right, you have a UK 2000 top mount, getting the Jatsby front mount quite cheap. Car is already 300. Would you benefit or just spend on an STI top mount? It depends how precious you are about cutting the front bumper, basically, to fit the front mount on there. If you've got a limited edition car like a McRae or like a RB5, maybe there's an immaculate condition, I probably wouldn't want to be cutting the front bumper to fit a front mount, in which case go with the top mount solution. If you or 22B or whatever, you know, I wouldn't want to be cutting the bumper off on that, just so you can fit a front mount. If it's you know, a UK 2000, you know, front bumper of those is pretty easy to come by. I would fit a front mount over a STI top mount any day. It works better. The faster you go, the better it works. You don't need to build quite so much safety margin in when doing a front mount mounted car. From Gravity short air induction kit, happy with it, good. And as Zed says, a fair few of us in the academy have got Gravity front mounts. Yeah, you know, they work. They work. Right, Are the Fastline twin scroll turbos better than a VF37? Yeah, it is a proper twin scroll, like the VF400 twin scroll. That's what we had on Matt's car when I mapped that, and that made 420. I'd like to think 428. I think it made 470 on methanol, sort of 20% methanol. If I could have any Subaru Forester, which one would you pick? I love my SG9 facelift. I used to take the mickey out the big mirrors, but the mirrors are brilliant. Love those. Yeah, the SG9 is probably the nicest one. If they could do the SG9, but with the like proper window surrounds on the doors, so that the road noise was, or wind noise was less, then I'd be well up for that. Right, Jordan. Hi, Jordan. Looking to get back into a Subaru, but unlike my last car, I'm only after a fun 300 horsepower car. Would you recommend a TD04 hybrid or a VF turbo? Right. I'm presuming you're talking about a WRX. Let's say a Blob-eye WRX. You wanted to get to 300 horsepower. Quite a few of those I've mapped, even on the standard TD04 with the top mount, like with a full D-cat or a sports cat exhaust. Quite a few of them will make very close to 300, if not 300. So if you're after around 300, then it could possibly do that as is, you know, with a decent exhaust on it. If you're wanting to absolutely make sure that it's going to make, you know, that the power figure is going to begin with a 3, then a VF is probably the cheapest option. But if you can't get a decent second-hand VF35, for example, then the TD04 hybrids are reliable and an easy way of getting over the 300s. You know, the VF, like second-hand, good quality second-hand VF turbos are going to become harder and harder to come by over the years. So, you know, the hybrid solution is going to be a better option long term. Is there a noticeable amount of lag when changing to a front mount? Is it worth it for a 260 horsepower car? Noticeable amount of lag? Not really. No, it's a bit of a Subaru myth, or you know, urban myth that you get a lot more lag with a front mount. You wouldn't really notice it at all. Maybe a slight delay in between gears, but it's fractions of a second, rather than, you know, waiting for a second before boost comes back again. On a properly set up car mapped with a front mount versus a top mount, there will be no point in the dyno curve where it would be less power with a front mount than it would be with a top mount. Hi Pat, is anti-lag alright to do on an 03 EJ205 WRX Blob-eye? I say it all the time. All the fun stuff's bad. So, is it okay? It depends on your attitude to risk. What it's going to do is going to cause a bit of extra wear on the turbo because of the shock loading of the pops and bangs. It's going to create a bit more heat on the exhaust valve side of things, so might wear the exhaust valve seats a bit more, and maybe reduce the life of the O2 sensor that's in the headers, that's also getting kicked around by the pops and bangs and the excess heat. Engine wise, shouldn't really make much of a difference, but it's the bits that bolt onto the engine that will take quite a bit of abuse from it, I'm afraid. Alright, what's the percentage when using methanol? 20%, 10%, or is it Mods related to just the mapper's preference? You don't really get any extra power running 50% meth to 30%. 20% is kind of the magic number because it's easy to work out. Like if you've got a 50 litre tank, you want 10 litres of meth in there, 40 litres of V-power. You start doing 25%, then it gets a bit more complicated. When I'm setting up flex fuel cars, I set it up with V-power at 0% methanol and then 40% meth, just so that the whole range of what could be used is covered, so that it can interpolate anywhere that it wants along that scale. So 30% is probably the magic power figure, but it's difficult to work out. So if you're adding it into the tank and you need to make sure that there's 30% of meth in there, a bit difficult to work out. 20% is a lot easier. Robert, right, the 5-speed centre diff rebuilds. As far as I can tell, lock the diff up a bit quicker. Standard is, and they go up to 20, which is full lock. STI used to make them with different rates. Yeah, I don't know anything about that, I'm afraid, Robbie. So I'd be bullshitting if I tried to answer that. I've got no experience of that at all. Right, how are we doing? I think there was a couple of questions that I've missed. Hi, Jake. Yeah, hi. I haven't spoken to you for a while. Have you done any DIY tunes for speed density yet? If not, do you plan to? Thank you. Yes. So yeah, no problem. If that's what you're after and whatever, then message me. I think we were chatting on Facebook Messenger before, so yeah, message me on there and we can sort something out. Right, let's have a slurp of this. Right, Cameron. Right, why does my Forester ABS light turn on and off random times? The really glib answer would be to say that it's kind of 23 years old now as far as sensors are concerned, so it might be damage to ABS rings that's doing it, or it might be the plugs that are actually corroded inside. Depends on the weather conditions where you are. Might be worth unplugging and unplugging back in all the plug connectors for the ABS system, just to see whether that frees it up. It's probably most likely that. I've not seen many ABS systems fail, but it's probably a plug connector that's a bit corroded. Wouldn't the 5-speed setup on a blob direct at about 320 brake horsepower be a front road car? Yes, it would. Yeah. Personally, I think the sweet spot for Subarus is around that 350 horsepower. You go much beyond that, and they start becoming unbalanced and a bit of a pain in the arse. Kind of like a supermodel girlfriend. You know, you might think it's great, but it's actually really annoying. I'm not saying my wife isn't a supermodel; she is absolutely gorgeous. But yeah, where was I? Yeah, for 350 horsepower, I think is the absolute sweet spot. And close to that, 320 to 350 is a good car, and is a really quick road car as well, particularly at WRX with the 5-speed gearbox. It's quick. Right. Wideband AFR that ECU Edit can properly recognise for login. Been struggling with the Innovate LC2. That should be working on that, Guillermo. Message me on Discord, and we can chat through as far as the setup of it is concerned, because must be something that is particularly not set up right. Right, how are we doing for questions? It's gone past 9 o'clock, so there's no questions there that I don't think I've answered. If you have got a question that I haven't answered, ask it again in the comments after it's gone into replay, and I will give you an answer as best I can. So, thank you very much for joining me, and I'll see you next week.